Welcome, Army fans. This is Joe Iacono with GoBlackKnights.com with our Where Are They Now series featuring 2008 West Point graduate and former Army football player and NFL football player Caleb
Uh,
Campbell, who now resides in Nashville, Tennessee. Caleb, how are things in Nashville? How's the family doing?
Joe, first, it's so great to connect with you again. And secondly, the family is great. We're still relatively new to Nashville, but Nashville has been a gift for us. And so we are enjoying it deeply, and life is good. Thank you for asking.
Cool. Well, Caleb, first off, obviously, thanks for joining us. There are a lot of Caleb Campbell fans that are subscribers to Go Black Knights and GBK. The younger folks might not be as familiar with you, but anybody who's been an Army fan for at least 15 years certainly remembers you. You have a super unique journey that I think many of our subscribers here at GBK may not be familiar with. And while we remember you playing at Mikey, the younger folks may not know that, after you played your last game as a Black Knight, what happened to you, kind of, and what your journey was like. So, why don't you kind of walk everybody through your NFL and Army journey and kind of what led you to where you are today?
Yeah. It's always so surreal talking about this. It seems so far, removed, but it's definitely
It's almost 20 years ago now,
yeah. It's
right?
like I'm getting to that point where it's like talking about it kind of feels like I'm going home to my hometown and putting on my high school football Letterman jacket and going out to the bars. But it is still a really big part of my story. And it's a season of life that, while there were a lot of unmet expectations, and I would even say maybe like a partially unfulfilled dream, I realized that the disappointment, the heartbreak, the pain, a lot of the internal discomfort that really surfaced during that season of my life has become the most valuable gift ever. It's offered me a chance to discover within myself what I had been looking for, really through my pursuit of success. And that's just completely transformed the overall quality of my life. And in a nutshell, it's made me just not only a better man, but a better father, a better husband, just a better person all around. And so I'm grateful for the season of my life. And to give you a little bit more context of that season, my sophomore year at the academy, I had a really breakout season. I was one of the top safeties across all of Division 1 college football, and so my name started to be dropped in this a sentence with the NFL, right? And so when people were talking about the NFL, my name began to surface in conversations. And at that time, there was a lot of discussion on, like, well, if he is able to go and play, like, is it allowed? And so my sophomore year, there was a new policy that was beginning to take form and also be implemented. And I can't really remember. I think it was like called the Alternative Service Obligation Policy. In a nutshell, it will allow service academy graduates to who got a professional contract to play and serve simultaneously. And so that happened my sophomore year, went through my junior year, senior year. I find myself at the NFL draft, as one of the featured stories of the draft, sitting there on national television with the fine folks from, Trey Wingo and ESPN. Doing a full interview with, or full spending days, multiple days with Rachel Nichols when she was still at ESPN. It
Oh,
was just,
yeah.
yeah, it was a
Love
surreal
Rachel.
experience.
Yeah.
Um, and I get selected. Detroit picks me in the seventh round, and a few weeks later, after graduating the academy, I was getting ready to start training camp. I woke up the day of training camp, which also that morning I was scheduled to sign my first NFL contract and start my first season as a rookie. And that's when my agent called me, and he said, "Yo, something's going on. You got to get to the stadium immediately." And so I got to the stadium, and that's when they, directed me to a team meeting room. Where when I walked in, I realized that anybody that was somebody from the Detroit Lions organization, they were there, from the head coach of the team to the vice president of the team, and they
Wow.
were all sitting there. And when I walked into the room, that's when they informed me that the policy that was allowing me to serve and play simultaneously, it had been rescinded a few weeks prior, actually. And nobody communicated that to me or the Detroit Lions until the day of my contract signing. And I was there from that moment forward, ordered to return back to active duty immediately, with the understanding that the policy had been rewritten. And after serving for a couple of years, then I would be able to make my way back to the NFL if I could get a new NFL contract. If I could stay in the elite shape that's required to play at that level, that would allow me to go back into and play. I know about like a year and a half into my time serving, they rescinded that again, and they said that that no longer exists either. And so basically,
I
you
didn't know
apply.
that part of your story.
Yeah, yeah. So that's when I had to start applying for an early release. That's when a lot of my commanding officers, they kind of were like, wait, wait, wait. They already took this contract. They already took this policy back one time. And also, I had a lot of support from the people that were directly in my life at that time, from one-star generals to all the full bird colonels you can imagine. It's so funny when I think about this season of my life, Joe, because here I am, really just a young boy, really in a man's body, but the mentality still of a young boy, and I'm sitting at tables with one-star generals, two-star generals, three-star
It is
generals.
weird to think about the amount of resources the Department of the Army
Yeah,
invested into this decision for a 22-year-old, 23-year-old
exactly.
kid. Like,
Exactly. And that's when they kind of rallied around and said, no, we want you to go play. And I had some support. There was a lot of criticism as well. But I was able to get that contract. I was able to get the early release, and the new policy implemented that allowed me to make my way back to the NFL. And there I spent a little bit of time with the Detroit Lions, and then, a small amount of time with the Indianapolis Colts, and then just a season with the Kansas City Chiefs. But little did I know at that time in my life that, as the only way of life, the only game that I had ever known since I was just a young boy, as it was becoming so clear that that season of my life was ending, I was being invited to say yes to a new game, right? A new season that would lead me down a path, and to places that were just never on my radar. But as I stand here in front of you today, like that journey, it's definitely been the part of my story that has transformed everything for me.
yeah, and we talked about a little bit about the fact, that you went to Canada and you became a
Yeah.
custodian, basically. What? I'm just curious, like that specific decision. What led you to that? Like, here's a guy from West Texas. You've lived in the U.S. your whole life.
Yeah.
What made you think that Canada is a good call? I'm just curious.
Yeah, is when I left the NFL, I was in a really a dark place. My mental health was um what it was broken, to say the least, and I was living with, like, you see, for me, Joe, like my whole life has always been this longing to do something meaningful, to do something significant. There's always been this thirst in me to rise above the status quo and to exceed expectations. And there was a part of me that has always lived with this understanding that, and there's so much conditioning and programming in my early childhood years that led to this belief system. But there was a part of me that just was so convinced that if I could just make it to the NFL, like I would find that wholeness, I would find that deep sense of satisfaction and joy and happiness that would just make my life feel so full and so abundant. But when I got to the NFL and I had the experience of what I had been chasing my entire life, I realized, and this is a big part of my message, like the goalposts just moved 10 more yards down the field, right? That life
Would you
satisfaction, that joy. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry for the interruption, but
No,
there's
you're
there's a
fine.
lot of talk around and in the mental health world, in the really leadership and success world, there's a lot of talk around destination disease.
Yeah.
Would you equate any of that to, like, oh, this is the
Yeah.
destination, and really the journey is where we should enjoy ourselves and have fun, or is it something entirely different?
Yeah. I think this becomes such a cliche, like sprinkled
Right.
through
Yeah.
Instagram, like the journey is the path. Like, but there is a sense of validity to it, where in my experience and also working with a lot of high achieving executives, there is this reality that we are looking to discover within our success, right? We're looking to discover within our accolades, our achievements, our promotions, what we can only find within ourselves. And so, a lot of times in our pursuit of more, in our pursuit of that next level of success, we distance ourselves from the real work that needs to be done. And that is looking within ourselves and asking, why is it so important to begin with? Like,
Right.
why do I need it so bad? And this isn't about, you know, create. I'm not saying the success is not important. I'm not saying
Right.
the accolades,
Well,
the
I think
achievements.
that's the thing people can misinterpret about your
Totally.
message is like, and I've heard your message full blown. I'm
Yeah.
all over your website and everything else. You're not saying success isn't important, achievement isn't
Oh my
important,
God.
but it's
No.
but it's how you get there that
Yeah.
is probably
Yeah.
most important. Is that
Yeah,
an accurate
there
statement?
was absolutely there was a moment when I realized that the majority of my life wasn't about the pursuit of success as much as it was about the avoidance of fear. And those two things look remarkably similar, but the outcomes are wildly different. The quality of your life that you experience in the process and in the journey, it determines everything, right? If it's an avoidance of fear rather than the pursuit of success, it's a completely different experience and it heavily influences the overall quality of your life and also your success. And so it's not that success is wrong. It's not that, performance is wrong. Like, listen, I'm hungrier for success now than I've ever been before, right? I am more determined and more driven now as a 40-year-old man than I've ever been before. I've got my second win and I am
That's
excited to see
awesome.
what unfolds. However, right, it's not about the need to be somewhere else other than where I am right now. The drive, the ambition, that is the motive behind my ambition is changed. It's evolved. It's shifted from fear based to purpose driven. And that is only allowed, or that is only the byproduct of doing my inner work, which you never graduate from. You're constantly doing your inner work,
Right.
right? And
Okay.
so, yeah, I think there was the going back to the original question, like there was this idea of like if I could just get to the NFL, then it would be enough. I would be enough. But I realized what actually happened is it created, and this is where I see with a lot of organizations or a lot of teams and a lot of individuals, is the success that we work so hard to create becomes a burden that we now have to carry because we're spending all of our energy trying to sustain that level of performance, trying to sustain that level of success. Right. And if we don't know how to renew, if we don't know how to replenish our inner foundation, our inner resources, suddenly we are now operating on the margins of our capacity. And the very success that we work so hard to create becomes the very thing that can fracture our well-being, can fracture our team's well-being, can fracture our overall life satisfaction and joy. And so that's what I was experiencing in the NFL. I realized like I wasn't using my energy anymore to get better and to evolve as much as I was using it just trying to hold together this idea of a man that I thought I was supposed to be, this idea of a leader I thought people expected me to be. I was holding together this version of success. And what had happened is it made me feel so immensely trapped in my life. Right? I felt like a prisoner in my own life because walking away looked like failure. Letting go looked like weakness, right? But also trying to hold on and keep it all together every single day was beginning to cost me in some of the most unimaginable ways. It began to wreak havoc on my mental health. So I felt stuck in that moment. And that's when it kind of like all came tumbling down. And I realized when I was going to get released from the Chiefs, I knew another team was just going to be the same reality. My agent called me and said we had a chance to go work out with the Falcons. I just knew that it was the season of life was over. And honestly, Joe, and I've said this to you before, like this was the hardest decision I've ever had to make because a lot of people that were close to my life, they looked at this decision and they said, this is you giving up. This is weakness, right? This is letting go. Like
Yeah.
this is
Well,
not
and as
what
a
you
high
stand
achiever,
for.
Caleb, and we
As a
talked
high
about this when
achiever, yeah.
we
Because
were
as
in
a high
Tucson together,
achiever,
how much does people pleasing come into that?
it's
Where
people pleasing and also like as a high achiever, like, and I've shared this story and I share this story in my message. Like I was 7 years old when I was taught to believe that my performance in life determines my measure of acceptance in this world. So from an early age, performance and accomplishments and accolades and achievements, they're not just something that we do, they become who we are. And so walking away from that, it does feel like failure. It does feel like weakness. It does feel like the antithesis of the type of growth that we are so accustomed to seeing and to experiencing. But walking away, I think there's a level, there's a season of growth that we're all being invited into. And sometimes that growth looks like pushing through and staying the course and holding on. Sometimes that growth is asking you to walk away. Sometimes that growth is found in letting go, right? And what I thought was the end was really the beginning to something wildly new and also beyond beyond that which I could have ever imagined when it comes to rediscovering all of the joy, all of the satisfaction, all of the happiness that had been buried under the weight of demands and expectations and pressures in my life. And so when I left the NFL, I was at my aunt's house and my agent was trying to talk me into coming, keeping the dream alive. But there was something in me that just knew this season of life was over. And I've shared this with you to another point, like where there's not another decision that I am more proud of than that
Mm.
decision right there, because that really is the first time that I feel like I honored my truth over the fear of what other people might say or think about me. And that alone would go on to transform my life in some of the most unimaginable ways. And so
Mm.
there was this level of courage that I demonstrated to own my truth, regardless of what other people are going to say. And that's terrifying when you've been a people pleaser your whole life. That's terrifying when people have only seen you through the lens of, or only seen you through one lens their entire life. It's terrifying because you feel so exposed, you feel so alone, you feel so misunderstood. And when I was in my aunt's, I remember scrolling through Twitter. So funny, so random.
Mm. Mm.
Scrolling through Twitter, and there was a series of tweets from someone that I was following that had retweeted some this conversation around um there is no new life like without first letting go, right? We're trying to, they were talking about like this idea of resurrection. I think it was around Easter, because they were talking about this
Mm.
idea of
Mhm.
resurrection versus
Mhm.
resuscitation. And they
Mm.
said that we're trying to resuscitate this old way of life when this old way of life really needs to die before the new life can emerge. And I don't know. It was like for the first time in my life, Joe, somebody had put language to what I was feeling. Whereas, like,
Yeah.
oh, there's
Mm.
a part of me, this season of life has come to an end. And that's okay. I want new life, but I have
Yeah.
to completely let go of this first one. And so I looked up this organization.
Hmm.
Um, that was having this conversation, and they were in Canada outside of
Huh.
Toronto. And there
Okay.
was something in me that just knew, because at this time I had a lot of job opportunities from different
Yeah.
service academy graduates, but I knew if something in me didn't change, nothing else would change. Like if something in me did not change, I would be recreating the same scenario over and over
Over
again.
and
It didn't
over. Yeah.
matter if I climbed the corporate ladder, those goalposts were always going to move 10
Gonna
more yards
move.
down the field. And
Yeah.
I didn't want to play that game anymore. I didn't know the new game, but I didn't want to play that game. And there was something in me that just said, go check out Canada. And I packed my bags. I drove to Canada. I walked into this organization. I met the person that ran the show. And I said, hey, you don't know me. This is going to sound really weird. Here's my story. I'm desperate for growth. Can you help me? And he looked at me and he said, yeah. And he had become a mentor of mine for the next several years. And that season was such a pivotal and profound moment for my life, because I realized the next level of growth for me wasn't about external success, it was about internal depth, right? It was learning how to befriend and confront a lot of the fear, a lot of the pain, a lot of the uncomfortable feelings that I had avoided and really that I had used as my ambition. Right. I grew up in a childhood experience where, deeply bullied and had a really, really tough childhood. And so much of my ambition was driven by I'll prove you wrong. Let me show you mentality. It was me versus the world, which is an incredible source of motivation. And it
Yeah.
served well, but it
Yeah.
also, at some point, it made me sick. And so
Mm.
that Canada season was the beginning season of me learning the new playbook to playing a new game, which would end up changing everything for me.
Good stuff. And, Caleb, as I mentioned, had the privilege of hearing you speak. And really, I mean, I knew it was going to be awesome for everybody, but I can't still get over your message and how impactful it was for me personally. I was like really pleasantly surprised,
Thank
honestly.
you.
And the compliments I received from a lot of my coworkers in attendance were amazing. As a former NFL football player and a West Point grad, honestly, two things that aren't super relatable to most people's experience in the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, West Point grads, I was graduate, I think, number 50,000 and like two. This is an interesting sidebar. The guy who was 50,000, President Clinton was at our graduation, and they like stopped the whole graduation for Clinton to give him a coin and everything. And I'm standing at the edge of the stage, and I'm going, they're still going to keep this thing from me. I'm still not going to be able to like that close. And I'm just like, talk about moving goalposts. I'm like, they're still going to be able. So that's kind of my funny West
I
Point
love
story.
it.
But very few of us have graduated from West Point. Even a much smaller chunk of people have played football in the NFL. Um, you know, how do you think your story of personal growth and
Yeah.
transformation relates so well to so many people? I mean, I had this isn't to like I don't want to try and like overinflate anybody's ego, but I had probably five or six women come up to me and they were like, I was crying. Oh my gosh. It was like it was so funny. So how does that relate
Yeah.
so well, do you think, to so many people in so many different walks of life?
Yeah. My goal is to get men to cry. So once I do that, then I'll really
You, you're you're in the ballpark, I'll tell you that. No, nobody would admit it. I'm sure we were, just no one's going to admit it. So,
yeah, as I travel the country, and thanks for the kind word, Joe. That really means a lot to me. I sincerely mean that. You've never had my story. You don't have my experience. I don't have your story. I don't have your experience. But my work as a speaker is to communicate a message in a way where we can connect with that same common denominator, really the humanity in us both. And if I can put language to my experience so that you can find yourself in my story, but better understand your story and the next step that you need to take to evolve and to grow, like I've done my work as a speaker. That's really what I long to experience. And so hearing that feedback, that means a lot. And
yeah,
yeah,
go
to
ahead.
answer
Sorry.
to answer your question, like right now we are facing just unprecedented adversity, right? There's rapid change, there's limited resources, there's really just the relentless noise of expectations and pressures and demands coming professionally and personally every single day. And the game, it's not slowing down. And what I've seen is that a lot of leaders, a lot of teams, a lot of people are finding themselves feeling so outstretched and operating on the margins of their capacity. They're trying to keep up, right? They're trying to manage all of the demands, all of the pressures, all of the expectations, and it's coming at a cost. There's a deep exhaustion that is pervading inside of every team and inside of every organization. And I like to say, a lot of people are finding themselves the type of tired right now that more sleep doesn't solve, and it's affecting performance, it's affecting morale, it's affecting the quality of our relationships, and more notably it's affecting our mental and our emotional well-being. And a lot of people in this place, they think the answer is to push through, to survive another day, to grind harder, right, to outwork it. But that really just perpetuates the same issue. That's really how burnout wins. And so the answer isn't necessarily trying harder or doing more. And it's also not doing less, because I think
Right.
we can both agree that doing less is not an option. And that's the last thing I want to advocate, because again, I am still a high achiever at heart. I want to see great success. So it's not necessarily about doing less. It's about a different way. It's about like this idea of what I like to say, it's about expanding within. When we expand within, what we are doing is we're strengthening our inner foundation that allows us to move through the complexity of today and the uncertainty of tomorrow with greater ease. It allows us to take the pressures of life and to and to use them as a pathway to expand into something greater. And so I think a lot of people identify with my story because of all of the pressures, all of the expectations, all of the demands, and me finding myself on the margins of my capacity, which affected every facet of my life. And then I went on this journey to understand, what does it look like to expand within? Because the truth is, Joe, like when I stood in front of your team, I didn't have to tell anybody in that room how to work harder. I didn't have to tell anybody in that room how to survive another day. My God, we all have a PhD in resiliency by now.
Right.
But resiliency is not the end goal. Resiliency is the starting point. Resiliency is what creates the foundation, allowing us to rediscover what has been buried under the weight of life, under the demands, under the deadlines, and really under the disappointments. Rediscovering that sense of presence, that passion, that curiosity, and that sense of aliveness that we all once knew, but it yet has been lost and buried under the weight of life. And this is why doing more is not the solution. The solution is rediscovering what's been buried. As a result, when we can tap into that spark, when we can rediscover that spark by using the disruptions of life as a catalyst to going within, suddenly we can reclaim our performance, we can reclaim our well-being, we can reclaim our relationships. And now we're not just performing at our best, but we're enjoying our work, and more importantly, we're enjoying our life once again. And so that's really been the heartbeat of my work. Is it can't be about doing more, it can't be about surviving another day, because we're not meant to just survive another day. At some point, the journey has to become about rediscovering what has been lost. And that's, to sum this all up, when I was a kid, Joe, like football was pure play. It was
Yep.
unfiltered play. It was full of presence. It was full of curiosity. It was full of passion. It was full of that sense of aliveness that made life worthwhile. But as the success grew and as the stakes rose, that play was substituted for survival, right? The game
Yeah.
wasn't something to enjoy, the game was something to endure. And
Right.
how many of us are right now are not, we're enduring our lives. We're not fully living our lives. And so this journey that I went on and learning how to lean into the inner discomfort of my life, right? It resulted in catalyzing a transformation that renewed every aspect of my life. And the gift of it wasn't just about emerging out on the other side with greater resiliency and adaptability to move through the complexity of today with greater ease. The true gift was, and I hope you can hear this in my voice, the true gift has been rediscovering that passion, rediscovering that joy, rediscovering that sense of aliveness that I once knew as a kid, but had been buried under the weight of life. And my work as a speaker is like, if you can rediscover that, Joe, if we can all rediscover what has been buried under the weight of our lives, undoubtedly it's going to change how you show up and engage in your work. It's going to change how you show up and engage in your relationships. And that is going to change the way you experience your life, because people right now, they're struggling to stay in the game, and not just stay in the game, but to enjoy the game. But when we do this type of work, we we rediscover what makes our work in our lives truly worthwhile. And that's really the deepest hope I have with the work that I do as a speaker.
That's awesome, Caleb. Well, you said you've always been driven to make a big impact, and you're certainly making a big one now, probably way bigger than you made in the NFL or even as
Thank you.
a West Point grad. So that's amazing. We're getting close to wrapping it up. Want to shift gears a little bit
Yeah.
and ask a couple football related questions. We're 2 days away from the Super Bowl, of course, and big weekend. And Brett Toth, who played for Army from Charleston, South Carolina, offensive tackle, is playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. Actually got in for 2 plays in the NFC Championship game, which was super cool.
So cool.
And I think Cole Christensen is still on the Kansas City Chiefs roster.
Yeah.
I interviewed him last year, Super Bowl
So cool.
weekend. And kind of they went into the NFL under different policies than what you went in under, and even Brett and Cole went in under two different policies. But overall, as you mentioned, there's always a lot of debate around should Army football players be allowed to go into the NFL or not. I know where I stand on that, but overall, do you think it's a good thing for the Army and for West Point to have guys playing on Sunday, Monday night, whatever the case may be?
Yeah. Yeah, I might be a little biased, but
Yep.
I do. Even yeah, I would still think that it is a a truly remarkable benefit to create this opportunity for service academy graduates. And, I saw it, a little bit of it in my short time in the NFL on the impact it made, not just around the other athletes in the locker room, but, the people that I engaged with in my everyday life. There was something special about it. And I think it does a really great job at representing the United States Army in a really great way, in a way that might not otherwise happen if this didn't exist. And so I think there's incredible opportunities, not just for the student athletes or for the athletes, but also for the greater whole.
I'm in complete agreement with you there. And last football question for you. I know you were classmates with Mike Vitti, who is the offensive line coach at Army, the Joe Moore award-winning offensive line, best offensive line in the country. Do you ever get an opportunity to touch base with Coach Vitti? And I know you're super busy with all your speaking engagements and your business and everything else. Ever get a chance to turn the Black Knights on the weekend and get a chance to see what the program's become, which really, compared to the days when you played, the team has improved about 500%, probably.
Yeah, yeah, they have definitely improved. Coach Monken has, done something special, and I had a chance to tune in, and I continue to tune in. I still love football. I don't watch it as much as I used to, but
Yeah.
I have to say I loved seeing another number 13 out there completely dominating the game.
From West Texas.
From West Texas.
That
Yep.
was
And so
awesome.
I was definitely partial to seeing that. And Bryson, he was such a gift to watch. And I sent him a message, or I commented on his Instagram post,
Oh,
like,
nice.
just like letting him know, like, it was truly a gift to watch him play for the Black Knights. It was special. It really was special. He's a special man, and I'm excited to see what the next chapter looks like for him, because regardless of what it is, it's going to be special because that's just who he is. And so, in that regard, it's been fun to watch the Black Knights. I need to get back to a game. Uh, yeah, I need to get back to more games, and that's something that's on my agenda. And in regards to Mike, it makes total sense that his offensive line would see the success that they saw, because we're talking about Mike Vitti here. Mike and I,
Yeah.
we've lost touch. We were co-captains together, but
Mhm.
even then, when we played, Mike, well, he was a different breed. He was a special
Yeah.
man. And you still see that, not only in his ability and how he shows up and the intensity in which he shows up every day, but also in how the people who he directly works with shows up, right? That
Yeah.
speaks volumes to the type of coach, man, and who Mike is as a person. And so while I've lost touch with him, I am definitely not surprised, to say the least, that he's seeing the success that he is seeing. And I wish him nothing but the best of luck.
Awesome. Yeah, we're in complete agreement with, I'm gonna miss seeing Captain America Bryson Daly out there next year. That he was a special player and
Wow.
really took all the Army fans on an amazing journey. So and I think Texas is still Mike Vitti's recruiting area. So we need to
Is
keep
it?
recruiting kids from West Texas.
There we
That seems
go.
to go well. So Caleb, before we wrap up, tell people, I highly recommend it out there. Any entrepreneurs, any executives that are looking to book a speaking engagement for your team, football coaches. I don't know if you've done high school or college football
Yeah,
teams,
yeah,
but
definitely.
football coaches as well, teachers, schools. We know you got your start speaking to schools, so administrators, any grads or any fans of the podcast out there who want to book Caleb Campbell to speak or want to learn more about you and your business, tell us how we can find you.
First off, Joe, I'm going to hire you just to be a hype man. I appreciate the love.
No
Yeah, you can.
problem. There's
You
there's a reason I'm the director of business development in my day job. So it's good. I'm not as good a salesman as some people, but I think I'm improving every
you're
day.
yeah,
So,
you're
yeah.
great. Again, thank you. And yeah, just calebcampbell.me, me. calebcampbell.me is my website, and you kind of see the work that I've had the chance to do. Ranging with organizations like Google to tech companies. really across all industries. And so it's been a lot of fun. And so, yeah, if anybody would ever like to have the conversation, I'm always open for it.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Caleb. Army fans, this has been Joe Iacono with Caleb Campbell. Go Army, beat Navy.